At the start of the 20th century, the great powers of Europe were caught in a web of tensions. This made war more likely. One major tension was militarism. Countries built up their armies and navies. They saw military strength as the best way to protect their interests. This arms race created fear and suspicion. Another problem was alliances. Countries made agreements to help each other in case of attack. These alliances meant that a small conflict could quickly turn into a big war. Imperialism also played a role. The powerful nations of Europe competed for colonies around the world. This competition for land and resources caused friction and resentment. Nationalism, a strong feeling of pride in one's country, was another factor. People became fiercely loyal to their nations. They were willing to fight and die for their country's greatness. The spark that ignited the war was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. He was killed by a Serbian nationalist in Sarajevo in 1914. This event set off a chain reaction. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and the alliance system pulled the other great powers into the conflict. Within weeks, Europe was engulfed in a war that would reshape the world. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire formed the Central Powers. They were opposed by the Allied powers, France, Britain, Russia, and eventually many other countries, including the United States. World War I began in August 1914. Germany, with its Schlieffen Plan, aimed for a quick victory. They planned to defeat France rapidly before Russia could mobilize. However, the war quickly bogged down into a stalemate on the Western Front. The Western Front stretched across northeastern France and Belgium. Here, soldiers dug trenches for protection. Trench warfare became the defining feature of the war. Soldiers lived in miserable conditions. They faced constant danger from artillery fire, machine guns, and poison gas. Life in the trenches was a nightmare of mud, rats, disease, and death. Battles like Verdun in 1916 and the Somme in 1916 resulted in horrific casualties with little gain of territory for either side. In 1917, two major events changed the course of the war. The United States, angered by German submarine attacks on civilian ships, declared war on Germany. The entry of the United States into the war with its fresh troops and resources would eventually tip the balance in favor of the Allies. Meanwhile, Russia, racked by revolution, signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany. This treaty ended Russia's involvement in the war. By 1918, Germany was exhausted. The German offensives of that year, while initially successful, ultimately failed. The Allied forces, bolstered by American troops, launched a series of counter-offensives, pushing the Germans back. On November 11, 1918, Germany signed the armistice and the guns fell silent. The war was over. World War I was the deadliest conflict the world had ever seen. Millions of soldiers and civilians had perished. The war left Europe in ruins both physically and economically. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended the war. However, it also created new problems. The treaty blamed Germany for the war and imposed harsh punishments, including huge reparations payments. This angered Germany and created resentment that would contribute to the rise of Adolf Hitler and the outbreak of World War II. World War I had a profound and lasting impact on the world. It led to the collapse of empires, the redrawing of national boundaries, and the rise of new ideologies like communism and fascism. The war also accelerated social change. Women who had taken on new roles during the conflict began to demand more rights. The horrors of the war led to a widespread desire for peace. The League of Nations, the first international organization dedicated to preventing future wars, was formed. However, the League proved ineffective in preventing the outbreak of World War II. The Great War left deep scars on the world, both visible and invisible. Its legacies continue to shape international relations and the course of history.